Do you believe there's some truth to this report about pre-screening reporters' questions?
The media treats Republicans and conservatives different than liberals and Democrats. Instead of complaining about it, we just got to find new ways to communicate.
That's why they don't want to answer questions. That's why they're trying to protect Biden from answering any questions. You wonder whether he even knows what's being done in his name. The whole thing is a joke.
Critics are calling out the Biden White House for reportedly trying to screen reporters' questions in advance. Sources telling the Daily Beast Biden's staff has on occasion pressed reporters on what questions they plan to ask Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
So this Daily Beast article says that several White House reporters have already on occasion been probed by President Biden's communications staff to see what sort of questions they plan on asking Press Secretary Jen Psaki. Do you believe there's some truth to this report about pre-screening reporters' questions?
Well, to quote Jen Psaki, the press secretary, I'll have to circle back to you on that. I mean, look, we're watching Amateur Hour, which is ironic because we know that they are only going to get softball questions. I've watched a couple of these press briefings, and everyone sees the clips that go around Twitter. I mean, they're basically getting, oh, you know, can you say something bad about Trump, or, you know, what color are the drapes in the White House type questions. So the idea that they have to vet these questions first is pretty crazy. And then Psaki basically punts everything anyway.
It's just hilarious, isn't it, Emily? I mean, they have no self-awareness. They put out these statements. Do they even realize how ridiculous they sound? They say, oh, we're doing this because we want to be more useful. Useful to who? Not to the American people who want information. Useful to themselves in terms of controlling the message. That's what this is all about. And increasingly, the whole thing, to the governor's point just now, the whole thing just reminds me more and more of the kind of gerontocracy we saw in the former Soviet Union, when you had these kind of figurehead old leaders like Andropov and Chernenko sort of propped up by their aides as a cover for everything else that was going on. That's why they don't want to answer questions. That's why they're trying to protect Biden from answering any questions. You wonder whether he even knows what's being done in his name. The whole thing is a joke.
I think we should just accept at this point that this is what the mainstream media is. This is what the administration is. But if you're watching CNN, or you expect a Washington Post reporter to give you an honest question and then get an honest answer from the press secretary, you got another thing coming.
Well, Jen Psaki apparently took note of a common phrase that she used, circle back. We've mentioned it on this network. And she had a response for what she describes as conservative Twitter. Listen.
I often note I'm going to circle back. I hate to disappoint conservative Twitter, but I am going to circle back on a number of things, as we often do directly.
For those of you who don't understand why this is such a big deal, it's because if Psaki doesn't like your question, she doesn't call on you. Your thoughts, Dagan?
27 years ago, my very first journalism job, my editor at the time said, don't cut deals. Rule number one, meaning never say, oh, I won't ask you this in exchange for an interview. And you don't tell people what you're going to ask them in advance. These are the very basic principles of journalism. Bigger problem is that so many people in the media are more concerned about censoring and shutting down other members of the media that they're trying to pull. I think the Wall Street Journal editorial page referred to it as the commercial lifelines of other media outlets, because again, that's what they spent the last 4 years just critical of Trump, never discussing policy, and now they're, well, genuflecting in front of those in the Biden administration.
And what do you make of how these sort of non-answers that are given are almost accepted when it comes to the response from Jen Psaki when answering questions?
Well, I think in the spirit of the Super Bowl coming up this Sunday, we should just give jerseys to everyone in the press pool at the White House so we can see the sea of blue that's there. There might be one or two that'll be in red and maybe some that pretend to be purple, but most of them are blue. So just spell it out so we can all see it. The bottom line is they held a different standard to Donald Trump. The media treats Republicans and conservatives different than liberals and Democrats. Instead of complaining about it, we just got to find new ways to communicate, which is why it's great to see how well Newsmax is doing and other forums that are out there. And Dave's right. We got to let our voices be heard on Twitter and other social media platforms to get the truth out, particularly to young people.